whole nother level, but still keep it ghetto. Whole nother level, but still keep it ghetto.
Welcome to episode 9 of The Process of Hip Hop. I'm Brian Joseph, writer, blogger at theprocessofhiphop.com. And as always, it's all about the process. In today's interview segment, I'll be talking to the founder of Funk House Records, Moe Z, MD, who's a longtime hip-hop and R&B producer. Moe has been a producer for the one and only Michael Jackson, New Edition, Morris Day, as well as legendary hip-hop acts Tupac Shakur and Snoop Dogg. So let's get into it.
To the Process of Hip Hop podcast, Moe Z. What's going on, man?
Happening, hanging in there, man.
Glad you're here, man. Hey, so I want to start, Mo, with your background, man. You've been in the game for a long time in the hip hop game.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how you got interested in hip hop and your background. Like, take me to that point.
All right. Well, I'll start with my first recollection. I was singing on stage. I think I was about 5. My mom had noticed that I could sing and perform and everything, and she had me performing all around. And then I remember getting really great responses, and it made me like, oh, wow. And I was singing like Al Green and Michael Jackson, that kind of thing at a young age. And so when my sister was born and she could sing too, my parents decided that they wanted to take us to California to make it in music. And so we moved to California. We're from Mississippi, Clarksdale, Mississippi, the blues capital.
Yeah.
And so, we come from, singing soul and blues and all of that, and came to California and, of course, gospel. And so we got into a church called Antioch Baptist Church, Missionary Baptist Church. And it kind of got, like, it was kind of known for having great musicians and singers, and like the choir was great. And we were coming in there as little kids, being in that environment, and they would be around, Edwin Hawkins and, Richard Smallwood, like really big gospel singers. And so we would be in instances where I ended up being influenced by these guys to play instruments. And I would play drums at like 12 years old for like Billy Preston and his sister and their choir and Keith Pringle and that kind of thing. And, just kept being molded around that. I guess how it got into being hip hop, because I was mainly into soul and funk, in the era of the 80s, like, Prince and The Time and Parliament and, Zap, all those elements. And I was really into that and gospel. And a friend of mine who I went to high school kind of dared me to make a hip hop track. And I had been watching a couple of guys around the neighborhood who had been doing hip hop. This was like, 85, 86. And they were doing hip hop and using the SP1200 drum machine and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is a whole different world. They would sample everything. They wasn't playing anything. Everything was from a DJ's perspective. So they would sample little pieces of music and make it go together and have those different elements with singing and stuff in the samples. Well, because I was a musician, I would take it to a different level. I would sample maybe drum loops, but I would play all the instruments on top, bass, keyboard, and all that. I started developing that kind of thing. And I had, I'd run into a guy at my high school who I wanted to put a band together with. And, soon after, he had worked at Sears and Carson with my dude Dale. And we brought Dale in to play keyboards. And we just became this band, and we sounded like Prince and The Time and different people. We had our own little vibe to it, but it was really off of that Minneapolis sound. And we would kind of break off and do our own production. Me, Dale, and the drummer, Lamorius. We would kind of break off and do our own production and like come up with little things that either were R&B or hip hop or whatever. And so I started, really going hard into the hip hop and developing rappers and stuff like that, and trying to get them into the game. But at the same time, I still had to do the singers and all that. My dad and mom were kind of orchestrating us developing this whole scenario from being, hey, I like to sing, to now you have dancers and you're practicing every day, and we learned the tools that it took to make that happen. We would continuously do it every day. And around this time, I remember because we were in Long Beach, and I remember one of my dudes producing Snoop when he was real young, like high school or something. And they would make these independent records, and they had this label called Thin Line Records, and it was through VIP Records, which was a mom and pop store.
Yeah.
But because it was one of the biggest ones on the West Coast, people who came from different states, and they wanted to push a record in California, they had to kind of go through VIP.
Yeah.
So they were building all this energy, and I would go and watch and I want to build this kind of energy because that's kind of what we're doing. So I talked to my dad, and we developed a label, and we started calling ourselves Funk House. And me and Dale and Lamarius, we were the main producers of it, and developing artists. And pretty soon we needed to get a lawyer in order for this soundtrack. Somebody had heard some of our songs and wanted to put it in the soundtrack. And so in the midst of doing that, we had a lawyer who now put us with a management company who completely switched us around, wanted us to do pop music. No R&B, no hip hop. And I had Snoop constantly asking me to do tracks for him, and I was just like, dude, I wish I could. I can't even do it. I can't. My managers won't let me. And so we did pop for about maybe 4 or 5 years. We've done some records that really didn't come out. I had one that I wrote that our mentor kind of took and, got credit for and produced and everything, and it kind of made us a little weary. And at this time, we kind of met Dr. Dre. And so I started hanging with Dr. Dre heavy. Like, I wanted to see what he was doing at the studio, watch how he do it. So I would take all of that, what he did, elements I learned from where I was from, Long Beach, my mentor who had us with pop music, and I took all this and just internalized it. It was like, okay, these are all tools. I'm not thinking of myself now as a hip hop producer or a track maker. I don't make tracks. Now I'm making tracks, and I'm showing you how to bring forth the best vocals on it. I'm showing you how to get the best hooks, and I'm developing all these tools. So pretty soon I wanted to go back to hip hop because another guy who grew up in Long Beach named OG Radio had gotten a deal with Interscope, and he had done it before Snoop had, before they worked on Snoop and Dre record. He had been there a while, and my other dude was producing him, Keith Clark. He wanted me to step in because he was having a hard time doing the business with, he was just tired of the back and forth. So about 92, and I'm working on radio, and I'm seeing all these new artists come in, like No Doubt, Marilyn Manson, like all these who are now icons. Tupac, they're telling me about him. Oh, wow, okay. And then, pretty soon I see him in the video with Shock G, clowning around with the doing this thing on there. I'm like, wow, he's really blowing up. So this dude's gonna be good. And it kind of just goes parallel for a while. I'm working on radio on the same label as Snoop and Tupac, and it's kind of a competition kind of thing. They're not really letting radio's record come out there because he's from Long Beach. He do the same kind of music Snoop do, which is the gangster funk, whatever. And I'm just really having trouble now. It's like 94, and I'm thinking, wow, what am I gonna do? So Tupac was walking through the building in Interscope and heard what I was doing for radio. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? I gotta meet him. And so they called me and said, Tupac wants you to, do some remixes, send him some tracks, and go to the studio and work on these remixes and see if you guys can vibe together. So I'm like, okay. And I talked to Dale and Lee, and they're like, come on, man, we're supposed to be doing this. And I'm going, I gotta get back into the rap, man. I gotta get back in the, I got Tupac, he's hitting me. And they were like, okay, we kind of just went our separate ways as far as the business. We all still was cool because I still involved them in different records that I did later. Like New Edition, we all got back together to do some stuff with that. And that was like 97. But let me rewind. Tupac had me go to the studio. I had sent him a bunch of tracks that I did, Lamorius did, and a couple other producers that I had under my belt. And I went to the studio and they had up the original version for Cradle to the Grave, Running from the Police, and Lord Knows. So I'm like, okay. So we had this time booked. I'm just in there flipping the tracks and, getting my artists on there to sing vocals and that kind of thing. And it was like, that was on a Wednesday. Pac heard it. They overnighted to him. He heard it on the Friday. By Friday evening, I had a plane ticket to go to New York to work with Tupac. And I was like, whoa, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, and just for a quick, Mo, would this have been Me Against the World then?
Yeah,
that album?
The Me Against the
Okay.
World. Actually,
Okay.
The remixes I had done, it was the tail end of Thug Life. They were dropping Thug Life album, but they were trying to get these songs to fit that. And the only one that did to them was Cradle to the Grave. So that ended up being the first single, which was like a week and a half later from the time I had done it. I was in New York when I was working on the next song, which was Outlaw. And he was telling me that day, and that was like the next Wednesday, he said, by Saturday, it's going to be on the radio. And I'm like, really? Are you serious? He said, we're going to put this on the album, too. We're going to take the other version off. And I'm like, wow. That fast. And then I didn't work with him for about maybe 6 months. And then they flew him out to California to work with me. And Mike Mosley and the guys that did Me Against the World shot.
So on Me Against the World, you have production credits from Soul Shock and Carlin, Johnny J, and Easy Mo B.
Those guys. He had us in 3 different studios all at the same time. He would work on something with me while I'm finished and tweaking it. He'd go to the next one, work on that, do his vocal, had him do it like just boom. He would come up with like 9 songs a day, just grinding. They weren't finished, but it was like his start and whatever else needed, we would add to it when he's not there. Because he felt like he had that creative energy. He could just go, and didn't like to sit and wait for me to add hi-hat for the next 20 minutes. You know what I mean? So we did that for about 3 months, I think. Every weekend or so, we go in there and do it, and came up with a bunch of songs. And then they had songs that they had already that they wanted us to tweak to try to fit the album. There were so many songs, and I mean, I got to be involved with a lot of them just because we all became not friends, but we knew each other pretty well from seeing each other all the time. I would sit in some of their sessions and stuff, and like If I Die Tonight, they was working on that, and I was in the studio, and my engineer Paul Arnold, he was like mixing it, and so the producer wasn't there, and I was just chilling with him. And then when he was like, tonight is the night, and he said, if I die tonight, tonight, and something in my brain said, tonight's the night I get in some shit. And I said, I just said it out loud. And he was like, ooh, that'll be dope. And, and added it.
So that's your voice on that track, man. I did not know that.
Just isms. There's something that we felt, throw that in there, But we all wanted to make that album just super. We finished Me Against the World. He got hit and went to jail. He had that court case and went to jail. Mm-hmm. And while he was in jail, we were trying to do the Outlaws, what they were called Dramacidal at the time. We were trying to do their album. he was calling on the phone. We were like in the studio. We would work in the studio over the phone. We tried to record him on a song, and it didn't work because of the phone delay.
Yeah.
And after that, it was like he felt disconnected. He would, you know, he was like, nobody put no money on my books, Moe Z. And I'm like, dude, my man, if you're not out here working, I ain't got no job. You know, this is what I do for a living. I'm all feet in. You know, I don't go somewhere and work and then come back and then do that as a hobby. I'm all in. So if you're not working, they're not hooking me up, you know. And so he felt so bad, and Suge and him was like, you know, we'll get you out, you know, but you gotta join the label. And he was already talking about wanting to be on Death Row. He was talking to me about that, and I was like, I don't think that you really do, man. I know Dre is one of my favorite producers too, but just the way that they do business, I don't think that you're gonna want to be a part of that. It's not gonna be something that's gonna be beneficial to you in your career, you know, as far as money. Now, yeah, you be out there popping and everybody, oh yeah, Death Row, this and that. But just like what happened, I told him, Dre told me when they signed Miss LA and DOC to Ruthless, they gave them a car and a house, but it was not in their name. It was like my auntie name, you know, that kind of thing. And Pac didn't believe me. And they did the exact same thing to him. And find out later that, you know, paperwork says that he owes them $40 million, but really they owe him that. And none of his stuff was in his name. And I just feel like he wanted to make, 5 records real quick and be off and doing his own thing, his own business. He was already on his own label on Interscope. It was Out the Gutter Records. He didn't need to do the Death Row thing, but he needed to be out of jail. He needed to be out so he could do some more speaking, is what I call it, speaking to us. He had more things to say, but I felt like the labels wouldn't let him say what he wanted to say. They pick and choose. They would, I ain't lying, man. They would pick and choose. Sometimes, like on some of them Death Row records, some of those lyrics were already on songs. They were already other songs that he did, and they would take part of it, and then they go, and then this is the hook, and you say something else for the hook, you know, fly this in from that. And I'm like, but they weren't the only one doing that, because Interscope was doing that too before he got with Death Row. They were doing that kind of stuff. Like, oh my gosh, I can't even think straight right now. But there were so many instances where he had recorded this vocal, maybe 91, 92. It didn't fit at the time as far as what the label thought, but Pac was always ahead of his time. So now, he in jail, they want to try to make it fit now, because now he's in the, he said the word that now he's actually in that situation. Now it fits. So now it seemed like he's talking about it. They would try to tailor make his story instead of just letting him tell his story. It wrote itself.
And you kind of mentioned this, but I want you to elaborate on this, because I've heard this before about Tupac's work ethic, how he was just a grinder. Talk about that a little bit, Mo.
Grinder. I mean, okay, I had a reputation of being able to do a track really fast, like, 3 hours from conception to, all right, you ready to do vocals, that kind of thing. And he had the reputation of writing fast and coming up with the exceptional things. So what I would always do is, because I would never get to the point of being finished with the track before he's ready to do it. We'll start together. I'm dropping this and he would listen to a hi-hat, but he know what I'm making. He already heard it in the sequence, but he'll just let me track it out. And then by the time I get like drums, bass, maybe the sample, if there's a sample, then he'll go, all right, I'm ready to do it. So we let him cut his vocal to that. And then he'll chill out while I'm finishing it up. He go, oh yeah, I like that. Yeah, oh yeah, and put some gunshots in it, bang bang, that kind of thing. Helps.
Yeah.
It's like we're feeding back and forth on each other. But he can write I mean, he'll sit and write it, and most people they'll have to practice it before they can memorize it. He will go in there, and there was a couple times he would accidentally drop the paper, and he would say, he would continue saying it, and sometimes I'd be like, punch that in again. You can hear the paper and all that kind of stuff, and he would go back, and he's actually saying the same lyrics that he wrote, and I was going, oh, I thought he was freestyling that, because most people would do that. They drop their paper, oh, I'm a freestyle. Yeah, he was still going off of what he knew what he wanted to say, and he wrote fast and he wrote powerful. It was powerful. He had things to say, no matter if it was a subject about a female that, like that. Wonder Why They Call You Bitch. That song. There's a lot of people who take that and they listen to it, and all they take from it is, yeah, they wonder why they call you bitch, huh, bitch, that kind of thing. That ain't. He's trying to help her grow. He's telling her about herself, so she'll go, oh, you wonder why they call you bitch. This is why. He's right. Even in that instance, he's still trying to help people grow. And to me, he always told us, each one teach one. And it was just like, okay, all right, let's see what you're saying. Powerful.
So once he began with Death Row, was that the end of your working relationship with him, or did you work on any other projects with him at that point?
No, it was pretty much done, because I had pretty much almost spit on him talking about how I don't want to be with Death Row, and how Suge Knight didn't. My father tried to shake his hand, he knocked his hand away, and Dre was like, "Oh man, don't worry about it," and all that. I just never had this vibe with Suge, and between that, those girls that sang on Snoop Doggy Dogg, What's My Name, and they were called Times 3, and me and Dale Harewood and Lamarius Tyler, we were working with them at the same studio in Solar, and right across the hall from where Death Row was working. And I had already made up my mind that that's I didn't want to go that route. I was trying to do multiple kinds of music. I didn't want to get stuck being just this one type of producer, but we were doing like some hip hop-ish kind of R&B. And so I guess when I had left the session, me and Dale, and we left the session, the girls kind of hung around and was, I guess, mingling with them. And they were talking about, they wanted to put the song out and everything. So they had, one of the guys called me. I believe his name was Wes, and he was like Suge's brother or cousin or family member or somewhat, but he was doing some work with them, and he told him, I need to get that reel. And they hit me up, and I was like, well, what do you mean you need to get the reel? Because if I'm producing it, if we're producing it, then, and we bought the reel, you just hire us to come to the session and we'll finish it up. And he was like, you give me that,
yeah,
just going off. And I'm like, oh Lord. And I was like, well, where I'll give you my address, and you come and get this reel if you want to. And I gave my address to 2191 Cedar, Long Beach, California. And then I waited outside for him. It was like 2 a.m, and no one ever showed up. But it was just, I didn't really want to be around. I mean, I had been asked by a few people to come and do some stuff with Death Row, but I didn't see the business part going right. I didn't feel I was going to get my due, and then the one time I did show up to try to see what was up, it was like a whole bunch of gangsters in the front of the place, and they was like banging on people. I'm like, nah, I just got back in the car and drove back home. It just wasn't the environment for me.
So was this about 1990, 91? When was this?
No, this was in this was like 89, 90.
So I didn't realize that they had been working on the Chronic since the late 80s, 89.
Yeah, it was before that, because they had been working on the Chronic for a while. they even had they had been shopping it to different labels, and the labels was like, nah, we can't push that. And they were saying crazy stuff. Like they had the hood tapes of the album going around the hood, and like, there's a part where they in the Dog Pound song, was this, no, it was on the Chronic, where they was like, how many niggas are ready to loot? What you want to do? What you want to do?
Yes.
Well, originally it was, how many niggas hate white people? And like talking like robbing white people, and it was like super crazy. So they were like shopping it to different people, and then when they did get with Death Row, they was like, you got to change some of this. We can't push it like it is.
Yeah. So after when you kind of parted ways with Tupac at that point, and you were never with Death Row, but that was kind of the end of that era for you. So
Yeah.
so if we fast forward now, man, to 2020, and I know a little bit about what you're doing, but talk to me about what you're currently working on and
Oh,
projects.
okay. Well, I would say since 2016, I worked on Morris Day, and a new album that is on Snoop's label. And so far, I have like 8 songs on the album. They kind of revised some of the stuff, and they dropped a single maybe a couple of years ago. Uh, it was a dedication to Prince, and called Over That Rainbow. They did a video and everything, and then this year they dropped one that features Snoop Dogg, and it's called Lil Mo Funk. And we performed that on Jimmy Kimmel in October this past. Had me and my sis and my girl and my other guy on keys, and some of his band members that play already. We performed it on Jimmy Kimmel Live with Snoop and everything. And so that's one of the things we're still trying to get that finalized. They're getting some features on it, and it's really cool, nostalgic kind of vibe. But at the same time, I'm building up my record label, which has been around since '87, called Funk House,
Yes.
and even Dale was a part of it when we first started. He helped us in the production and everything, and Lamorius Tyler. And so I'm still doing that. Now I'm doing it more in a capacity of executive, instead of like just producer. So I'm bringing in producers, I'm bringing in writers, I'm bringing in young artists, old artists, uh, R&B, pop, rock, gospel, hip hop, kids music. Like I really want to hit a good spectrum, and coming from the standpoint of not messing people over on their money, and making sure that they build avenues to for it to be a business, and they can sustain it for their kids, and just I want to teach everybody how to be a business, and in this whole thing of screwing over artists to try to make all of this money. The money's cool, but if everybody is not sharing in it, it just becomes one of those things where you're just this dictator, and you have to do what I say, and if you don't do what I say, punished and fined, and we're not going to push your album. All that drama I want to leave out, and really help bring music back to where it needs to be, and that's people being really caring about what they write, what the music sounds like, what the mix, the whole shebang. It needs to be a better focus, and nobody's really teaching the young. They want to
Yes.
corner the market, and it's just they're the future. And we already see, if you just leave it up to their devices, the younger ones, how music can shift into something that everybody's like, what is this? And of course there's always a movement, and there's always people that are into it, but you know, music is diverse, and it's just some of the things I kind of don't agree with some of the things that are said in
Yes.
music. Oh my gosh. I mean, like, I wouldn't, and when I was younger, we would never would have heard any song on the radio that says something like, "You got to eat my booty like groceries."
Right.
It never would have been a thing. And now my kids hear that stuff on the radio, and it's like, oh man, that's not what I want.
Sure. Do you see now, and again, because you've had the opportunity to be around for a long period of time, do you think that the approach to production, though, has even changed? I mean, lyrics, obviously, and censorship has definitely changed.
Yeah.
How about the approach to production from the 80s when you started to right now? Has that changed?
It's changed so much because of, for one, when it got to the era where it was, drum machines and synthesized things like that, when it first developed, there was some musical thing about it, and it started gradually becoming something that is more about the record being inexpensive to make.
Right.
And so when that happens, you cut a lot of corners. You start to make songs that, 2 or 3 minute songs that repeat like the exact same thing over and over again. No real creativity to it, because the record labels are like, I don't want to spend money on making the record. I just want a hot record. Give me if you can make a hot record out of your living room, then give me that. And if people like it and you got a lot of fans, then maybe we'll help you push it. It's like completely reversed, where before they would groom you to be this great artist. They teach you all the things you need, the etiquette, how to go and do an interview without looking stupid, saying just ridiculous things. It's a madhouse.
Mm-hmm. What do you? So you have Funkhouse Records. That's something that's going to be going on for a while. What is the best way for people to stay in contact with you and what you're doing? Okay.
I'm on Facebook. They made me use my real name. I don't know why. Somebody hacked my other page, but it's L. Maurice Stewart. Oh, you can type in Moe Z MD and it'll come up, but you'll see on the actual page it'll say L. Maurice Stewart. And I'm on Instagram, Moe Z Star, MoeZStarr. And those are the two best places to catch me right now.
Well, Moe Z, man, thanks so much for joining the process of hip hop. Best of luck to you, man, in the future. I know you're going to be doing some great things, man. You're very talented. So thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Oh, I wouldn't have missed it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Process of Hip Hop. Join us next week for our next episode. The Process of Hip Hop is produced and edited by me, Brian Joseph. Executive produced by Dale Harewood. Music by DJ Big Mike of Real Side Records at realsiderecords.com.